Are you ready for some Blackhawks hockey? Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney. We are back for an NHL regular season with some Blackhawks hockey, for better or for worse. Mostly for the worse this season, but by design at least. That's right, the 2022-23 NHL regular season kicks off for the Blackhawks tonight. They are facing off against the Colorado Avalanche, and I will have a preview of that game for you in this video, but before that, I want to kind of talk about the team as a whole, the players that left over the offseason, players that came in. I have a few observations from watching the preseason games, and we'll discuss some of the players who could be called up throughout the year who were sent down to the American League. While the Chicago Blackhawks are supposed to be very bad this season, the Rockford IceHogs should be a lot better and a lot of fun to watch. So if you get tired of watching the Blackhawks lose, maybe sign up for some AHL TV and watch the Piggies down in Rockford. You can see the prospects, see some kids play, see what the future of the Chicago Blackhawks looks like, because the future is certainly not now with the NHL roster. Speaking of the NHL roster, how about we jump right in and talk about the players that we lost over the offseason? Of course, you have the big guys, Alex DeBrincat, Kirby Dach, Dylan Strome, Dominic Kubalik, and then you have both goaltenders, Kevin Lankinen and Colin Delia. We also lost some guys on the back end. Calvin DeHaan went back to the Carolina Hurricanes. Eric Gustafsson joined Dylan Strome over with the Washington Capitals. Wyatt Kalynuk signed with Vancouver, and just recently the Blackhawks traded Riley Stillman to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Jason Dickinson. And with some depth forwards, we lost Brett Connolly due to a buyout, and Henrik Borgstrom went on and signed with the Washington Capitals as well. But like any NHL offseason, we didn't just lose players, we also brought in some new guys, because we definitely very much had to, seeing as we had no NHL goaltending. So let's start with the goaltenders. In net for the Chicago Blackhawks this coming season, we have Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock, the Tank Commanders. And if we're going off the preseason, it seemed like they're going to be doing their job pretty well, especially if that last game in the preseason is any sort of indication, with the Blackhawks losing 6-0 to the St. Louis Blues. But on defense, the Blackhawks just recently added Jared Ternorty after claiming him off waivers. They also added Philip Roos and Jack Johnson to the blue line in free agency. Jack Johnson, a Stanley Cup winner with the Colorado Avalanche, he will be suiting up tonight taking on his former team. I swear that has to be the only reason he decided to sign with the Blackhawks. He wasn't going to go back to Colorado, but he wanted to be there for the banner raising to kick off the season, so he looked at the schedule and said, oh, the Blackhawks are the team that the Avs are playing that night, let me go sign with them. You do get to play for Luke Richardson, so there is also that, and players seem to really enjoy playing for the guy, so that is one reason to sign with the Blackhawks. But when it comes to Jack Johnson, I refuse to believe anything other than he wanted to be there for opening night in Colorado. Up front, the Blackhawks have a few additions, like I said, just getting Jason Dickinson from the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Riley Stillman. They also went out and signed Max Domi, Andreas Athanasiou, and Colin Blackwell in free agency. And they also picked up Buddy Robinson, who appears to be slotting in on that fourth line for the Blackhawks. So those are the guys that we brought in over the offseason. And of course, there are some returning friendly faces as well. You have the big two up front, Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. For how long, that is still yet to be determined. Also returning, we've got Jujhar Khaira, Mackenzie Entwistle, Tyler Johnson, Sam Lafferty, Taylor Radish, Philip Kurashev, Boris Kachuk, and on the back end, of course, Seth Jones. That contract kicks in this season, along with Connor Murphy's 4-year deal. That also kicks in this season. We've also got Jake McCabe and Caleb Jones on the back end, and Alex Vlasic returns along with Alec Regula, who appears to have made the team out of camp. So those are your returning friendly faces to the Chicago Blackhawks roster. Now, how about some guys who could make the jump into the NHL. And when I say make the jump, I don't mean on a permanent basis. Of course it's possible, but it seems like Kyle Davidson and the new staff is really committed to using the American Hockey League, using the Rockford IceHogs to develop these prospects, giving them another full year in the AHL to see how they progress, and it's going to be a lost season up here in Chicago, so it's not like if they were up here on a full-time basis they would be playing for anything. But down in Rockford they can play to fight for a playoff spot, get into the postseason perhaps, and then see how far they can take it. But of course throughout the year there are always injuries up and down the lineup, and sometimes a guy just plays very well in the American League and the coaching staff and the GM up in Chicago want to give him a couple games to reward him or see what they have in his game at an NHL level now, see how he has progressed from what they have seen before. So here are some guys who could make the jump. And I'm going to start in net with the obvious Arvid Söderblom. And here you kind of have to put an asterisk because Arvid Söderblom is the third goaltender on the depth chart for the Blackhawks unless they go out and pick up another guy, pick somebody up off waivers. And in net in Chicago, you got Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock, and if you were going to make me bet on whether those two guys could stay healthy for a full 82 game season, I wouldn't put a bunch of money on it. It's my hope that as the season goes along, maybe a goaltender pops up on waivers that the Blackhawks want to take a risk with and pick him up as the third guy to keep in Chicago, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if the Blackhawks want to develop their prospects to have Arvid Söderblom come up here in case of a long-term injury to either Mrazek or Stalock, because then he misses those games in the American League, and then there's a big hole in net in Rockford, and if you want those kids fighting for a playoff spot, you take away their starting goaltender, it's going to get a lot harder for them. So to me, it seems like the best option here is to go pick up another depth goaltender to have in the system, but for now, Arvid Söderblom is that third guy on the chart, so should there be an injury or a tweak or needing to call up a goaltender on an emergency basis, Arvid Söderblom is the guy. On the back end, my picks to get a call-up on defense for the Blackhawks would be Ian Mitchell when he comes back from injury, and Isaak Phillips. Neither of these guys should be a surprise. Ian Mitchell has seen NHL time before, and Isaak Phillips, I am always going to mention him in this conversation. The unfortunate thing for Mitchell is he is injured. He's going to miss a good chunk of the beginning of the season, and this is almost a make or break year for him. He's not super young anymore in terms of hockey. You go look up his age and you say, he's not old. What am I if Ian Mitchell is old? We're talking about in hockey terms and hockey prospect terms here. When he broke into the NHL out of college, he played most of his first season with the Blackhawks. Of course, that was the COVID-shortened season. And then his play started to fall off a bit toward the end of the year, so he was sent to Rockford. He spent basically the whole year last year in Rockford and became part of that solid number one unit that consisted of him and Isaak Phillips. So those two getting a call-up at some point during this regular season would not be surprising at all. It shouldn't shock anybody. And I would like to see how Ian Mitchell would fare against NHL competition. He seemed to take a lot of steps forward last year and really worked on his game in his own end, became a lot more responsible on the defensive side of the puck. And that's something he needed to work on when he was sent down to Rockford. So now that he's had a full year of working on that in the American League and a couple of off seasons in between, I would like to see how that then translates to the NHL. I mean, what do the Blackhawks have to lose by calling him up and seeing what he's got? Nothing. Up front, one of the kids who was really a standout surprise in training camp and in the preseason was Cole Gutman. He was signed as a free agent, came into camp, and really stood out, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was one of the first call-ups. I don't know if he would be the first call-up. It depends on who he is replacing in the lineup, but I think he will get a shot in regular season NHL action sooner rather than later. Along those lines, we also have Josiah Slavin. He did see time with the Blackhawks last year, so getting a call-up definitely wouldn't be a surprise when it comes to Josiah, especially if he needs to replace a depth guy in the lineup, somebody who is defensively responsible. And who knows, I think, again, sooner rather than later, he is going to become a full-time penalty killer in the NHL. It just depends on whether Kyle Davidson wants to give him that chance this year, or if he does really want to stick to his guns and keep the kids in Rockford this season. And last but not least, we have Lukas Reichel. We all know that at some point this season, perhaps at some points this season with multiple call-ups, we will see Lukas Reichel in NHL action. I really like the decision for him to be sent back down to Rockford to start the year. He doesn't seem exactly ready for full-time NHL action, and one thing Kyle has said is that when he calls guys up, he wants them to prove that they can stay in the NHL rather than just calling them up and keeping them here when they're not exactly ready. When they get that call, he wants to make sure they are ready to get that call. That doesn't mean they won't get a few games here and there, but unlike years past, the Blackhawks aren't going to rush their prospects and just throw them into a full-time NHL spot and expect them to do great things, especially in a season when great things are going to be few and far between when it comes to this roster. I know, a lot of people were upset when Lukas Reichel was sent down because he is the shiny new toy and we all want to see him do great things in the NHL with the Blackhawks. We want to see him playing with Patrick Kane, those two lighting the world on fire. The fact of the matter is he is just not ready for that yet, and that is okay. He is still very young. He has time to improve, to progress in his skills, to progress in his game away from the puck, getting stronger on the puck, because like I said before, this is basically a lost season for the Blackhawks, and next season will probably be pretty much the same. So Lukas Reichel and some of these other prospects have this time to go down to the minors and really work on the small details of their game. So when they do get that permanent call, they prove that they can stay here and make an impact with this team going forward. We don't want more situations like Kirby Dach or Adam Boquist where you can see all of the potential. You just know that they were rushed and they were not put in a spot to succeed. They didn't have the time to develop properly because they were rushed into their spot and then just expected to do things in the NHL that they weren't ready to do. Had they been given a chance to show what they can do in the NHL and then go work on the things that they need to work on, say in junior or in the AHL, then maybe things would have worked out a bit different for both of them with the Blackhawks. So while I've seen a bunch of people online, you've probably seen a bunch of people online say they don't agree with the decision to send Lukas Reichel down, it is 1000% the best choice. We all want to see him become a superstar for the Blackhawks. It's just going to take some time if he's going to get there. So those are the players who could make a jump to the NHL. Now, when it comes to the season ahead and kind of predicting how it's going to go, other than, well, it's gonna be very rough with so many new faces, especially in key roles such as, goaltending. We can only really go off of the preseason so far, and depending how you want to look at that, the Blackhawks went 1-5-0 in preseason. So they played 6 games and they won 1 of them. The one game that they won, Arvid Söderblom was in net for the full game, and most of the kids played that one. The future is bright in Chicago. But like I said, the future is not right now. The right now is very much not bright in Chicago. Along with going 1-5-0, they were also outscored 6-22, which, if you're keeping track at home, is not good. And somehow that gets worse because 5 of these 6 goals came in the first 2 games. And one of them was an empty netter. So that means in the final 4 games of the preseason, the Chicago Blackhawks scored a grand total of 1 goal. And that 1 goal was achieved, oh god, it hurts so much, by Jack Johnson, just as we all expected. Patrick Kane went scoreless in the preseason. Jonathan Toews only had 1 point in the preseason, that coming as an assist on the Jack Johnson goal. Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock both allowed 10 goals throughout the games that they played. They didn't necessarily look horrible in doing so, though, so we might not have a complete dumpster fire in net, but we are still going to lose a grand majority of games. But again, that is by design. The Tank Commanders are ready. But aside from the stats, another thing that did stand out in preseason was that the team was playing pretty hard, even when they were losing. They were going at the forecheck with purpose. They weren't just sitting back and letting the play come to them. They were challenging the opponents with the puck. And I know that's something that Luke Richardson really talked about wanting to improve on. So if we can see more of that going forward and throughout the regular season, that's going to be a win. May not be a win on the score sheet, but it is a win in our hearts. And that, my friends, is all we can hope for this year. But another thing that would be a win for the Blackhawks would be if they can get some sort of defensive structure in place, rather than all 5 guys in the defensive zone just running around, not knowing where they are supposed to be, looking extremely chaotic. Sometimes chaos works for you and you confuse your opponent. They don't know what's going on either, because you definitely don't know what's going on. But unfortunately, in the NHL, that chaos does not necessarily work in your favor when it's in your defensive zone, because you're playing against other NHL players and they're pretty good at what they do. And what they do is score on your team. Hence why the Blackhawks get scored on more than they score on other teams. So with Luke Richardson being a long-time defender in the NHL, we can really hope that he comes in and is able to give these guys some sort of structure to work within, so we can at least see what they're trying to do. We may not exactly have the talent to execute on every piece of that, but you can see the intention, and as long as we can do that, that is also a win in our hearts. Other than that, the goal for the season is to be bad. The Blackhawks need to bottom out so they can get the best draft pick possible, and that is how this rebuild is going to work. Would it be awesome to get the first overall pick, have that chance at Connor Bedard if he is the #1 pick come next summer? Of course, he seems to be the consensus #1, but Shane Wright also seemed to be the consensus #1 for a very long time. If you have the first overall pick, you get to choose whoever you want. But yes, that would be amazing. Is it guaranteed even if the Blackhawks have the worst record in the league? No. It's a lottery, but this is a very deep draft. It's very front heavy as well as being deep, so it is a good year to have picks, and the Blackhawks have quite a few of those. But of course, getting the best draft picks possible is always the goal when you are in a rebuild. So, being bad is one of the ways you can guarantee that. So that is the goal. Aside from that, we need our goaltenders to stay healthy so Arvid Söderblom can stay in Rockford, keep progressing, help the Ice Hogs hopefully reach the playoffs, and then our prospects can play for something. And for the long-term stability and success of the franchise, that long-term goal starts with this season and seeing kids make progress when they do get call-ups to the NHL. All of those things are what we can hope for. And it all starts tonight. Game 1 of 82 against the Colorado Avalanche. Last season's Stanley Cup winners. The Blackhawks get to start the season against the best team in the league. Because why not? They also started last season against each other, and if you'll recall how that went, the Blackhawks were down 3-0 within the first 10 minutes of the game. Jack Johnson, now of the Blackhawks, scored the first goal of the game on a breakaway. Yeah, that was a thing that happened if you forgot. I wouldn't blame you. It seems like a fever dream, but that seemed to spell out how the season would go for Chicago. And I think maybe it went worse than any of us could have predicted. But that was last season. Now we have this year. We are starting once again against the Colorado Avalanche. Hopefully we get a bit of a better start here. It seems as though Alec Regula is going to be in the starting lineup. I have the projected roster for Game 1 tonight. On line 1, you have Andreas Athanasiou, Max Domi, and Patrick Kane. Line 2, you have Taylor Radish, Tyler Johnson, and Jonathan Toews. Line 3, you have Philip Kurashev, Mackenzie Entwistle, and Sam Lafferty. And line 4, you have Buddy Robinson, Colin Blackwell, and Jujhar Khaira. On defense, the first pairing is Jack Johnson and Seth Jones. Lord help me. Defensive pairing number 2, Jared Tenorti and Connor Murphy. Lord help me even more. And pairing number 3, Philip Ruse and Alec Regula. That poor kid. What did he do to deserve this? And in net, you have the regular season debut for Peter Mrazek in the Blackhawks crease. Now, there may be some shuffling before game time with some guys moving to different lines or different defensive pairings, but that is going to be your opening night roster. I am 99.9% certain, unless there are changes right before game time, which there probably will be just because. But we do get to see the banner raising ceremony for the Colorado Avalanche. Jack Johnson gets to be there for the banner raising ceremony since he did win the Stanley Cup with the Avs, so that's pretty cool. Other than that, I mean, I guess we can just watch for some highlight reel goals by Nathan Mackinnon, because again, if we're going off of preseason, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of offense coming from the Chicago side of things. Here's my hope for game number 1. Don't get shut out. It is also the regular season debut for Alexander Georgiev in net for Colorado. So 2 goaltenders on their new teams in their regular season debuts. Who's going to be better? If I come into this video after this game and I have a surprising answer to that question, I don't know how I'm gonna handle that. So stay tuned for that one. But if the Blackhawks could just get a goal, that would, be really, really cool. Just start the season not on a total downer note. Like, they're gonna lose the game, but at least score a goal. And maybe, don't make Peter Mrazek make a bunch of miraculous saves, or, attempt to and then not. That's gonna be a weird season, y'all. But that is going to be it from me in this video. How are you feeling about the 2022-23 Chicago Blackhawks season ahead? Please, let me know down in the comments. If you would like to hear more from me or from Center Ice, you can go on over to FromCenterIce.com. There's links to absolutely all of the places you can find us over there. If you are not subscribed to this channel yet, go ahead and do that. Give this video a like, because we need some sort of goodness for this season, and that would start it off good. But if you would like to follow along on social media, all of the links for those platforms are down in the description for you. All of that said, thank you all so very much for tuning in. Get ready for game number 1 of 82 of what is going to be a very, very hard season. We will see how long I keep my sanity, or what's left of it. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye, guys.